Hey. So, I'm back. Apparently my nice little, not so, a pretty new laptop said it had to do an emergency shutdown and shut down. So I was in the middle of reading about cool stuff. So I don't know where it shut down. All of a sudden look up, it says it's emergency shutdown. So I'm going to start again. So Helena has The Phoenix and the Falcon. Please check it out on Amazon. If you've already done so, tell a friend. My dearest wish is to see this be a movie. It'd be a great movie, very visual. But now with COVID, we probably have to wait because it has, too many people. How you film it 6 feet apart. Well, I guess they do testing. So you never know. So chapter 11, she's cursed Julia. Unbeknownst to her grandfather had this mystical power that wasn't so good. But it suits her. She's been through it. Chapter 11, the curse invoked. Helena stilled her voice. Her body no longer surged with power. It was quiet and debilitated. The raw sensation of omnipotence had vanished. She felt exposed. Her eyes on Grulia, she trembled with exhaustion. Seeing her weakness, he laughed, and his mouth ripened into a vicious sneer. Yet, behind his bravado, she sensed fear. Though her words had been Persian, she knew he had felt the full force of their malevolence. The curse had been woven tightly, without a seam, lacking only her blood to secure it through time and space. How she understood this, Helena could not have said. The knowledge emanated from her flesh, her very bones. Something of the power lingered, separate, alive, unwelcome. She could not give it a name, much less set it aside. She continued to stare at Grulia, undisturbed by the malice in his eyes. She knew darkness. She had been its instrument. His evil was puny and inconsequential compared to what had consumed her, what had fed upon her soul. She wished it away, but, unable to focus, her thoughts drifted. Time slowed, losing its continuity. Someone nudged her, but she ignored the prodding. Instead, with dispassion, she wondered why her hands had reversed the order of the runes, drawing first with the left and then with the right. Oddly apathetic, she disregarded the mystery, staring at nothing in particular on the ground. Again, there was an intrusion, someone squeezing her hand, shaking it. She stirred herself and saw Karatapan, his eyes intense with dread. "Helena," he whispered, "what have you done?" He took Pasiel by the halter and guided him backwards to create distance from Gilia. They remained close to Valamir and Thudamir's position, but a little behind them. She barely noticed. Instead, she smiled with twisted exultation, cherishing the darkness. It was a cocoon, shielding her and keeping her safe. Grulia will find his death hard. The Dark Lord doesn't do your bidding. You do his. If you don't stop this, he'll have you for all time, Karatapan whispered with heightened urgency. What's wrong with revenge? She flung back. Karatapan persisted, his distress and affection creating ever-widening cracks in her shadow world, pushing through the miasma, forcing her to feel again. The price is too high, Helena. You'll pay with your soul, with your humanity. In the end, you'll be no better than he. Hot with shame, she heard truth in his words. Still, the heaviness remained, its malevolence corrupting the very air she breathed. In despair, she struggled against its odious taint. You must do as I say, Helena. Her voice was flat, monosyllabic. Tell me what to do. Pray with me. Say, please, Lord, return to me. Forgive me, for I have invoked darkness. Without you, I am dust. Protect me. Guard me from all that is not you, and with your sacred golden light dispel any darkness from my soul. Helena repeated the first phrase with reluctance, forcing it from her throat. With each word, the resistance lessened, loosening its hold. All at once, the corrosive presence was gone. The air smelled sweet once more. The sky was vivid blue. Now, Karachman said, draw this rune on Pasiel's neck. He traced a small insignia with his fat finger to the horse's thickening winter coat. Helena watched him carefully. Unlike her grandfather's, the rune was simple. Drawing the sign, she felt refreshed, even renewed. In the old days in Persia, mothers would teach their children this rune as a ward against the Dark Lord. Can you remember it? Feeling an odd tingling, she nodded, unable to tell him that she recalled the symbol. Her grandfather had taught it to her years ago when she began afraid of the dark. Speech had become a distant goal, requiring enormous effort. Helena, do it again, quickly. This time the rune with your eyes as well. Imagine it glowing with golden light. She obeyed without hesitation. Her lethargy vanished as if it had never been. Karachman let out his breath, audible in his relief. Good. It's only a simple rune. I don't know any others to protect you from that thing you invoked. Helena's heart opened to him. He was agitated and out of his depth. As she spoke, her voice was calm, quiet. She felt rooted to the earth, yet part of the sky, the wind, the horse under her. It will be enough, Karachman. Have trust in the One. His light alone vanquishes darkness. For a moment, he looked bewildered, then elated. He smiled with a kind of pride. You are of the old blood, Helena, as was your father before you. Always remember that. She shook her head, remembering last night's dream, wanting only the best of her grandfather, not this other memory that both compelled and frightened her. Valimir interrupted them. Karachman, Helena, he said in Greek. Quiet, you distract me. His voice was harsh. He looked back at them. His eyes were troubled, almost afraid. He had sensed part of the evil. Helena wondered how much time had passed. For her, it seemed a lifetime. She realized that Grelia had been airing his grievances for all to hear. Engrossed by her thoughts, she had no idea of what he had been saying. Karachman bobbed his head with deference, but shot Helena a keen look. Feeling like a conspirator in a private joke, she checked the impulse to laugh by biting the inside of her cheek. Her self-control was tenuous. She did not dare catch his eye. Turning away, she saw through the mirror staring intently, a witness to everything. She did not care if he had seen the runes. They were not for him. For better or worse, they belonged to her and those of her grandfather's blood. She shrugged, dismissing him. He scowled. Helena, Valimir repeated, but kept his focus on Grelia. Hearing his voice, she felt shy and apprehensive. She did not care about what he thought of She did care about what he thought of her. She edged Pasiel closer to him, but was conscious of the darkness that had enthralled her, that still craved Grelia's blood. It was unclean and foul. Valimir must not see it. Shielding herself from the likelihood of his rejection, she took a deep breath before facing him. Her fear was not realized. Instead, she felt their connection, a communion between souls, as if it spanned a lifetime, not just 2 days. Grelia severed their soundless harmony. I've come to trade, he said in Ostrogothic, his voice nasal. Helena and Valimir turned to face the enemy. Thudimir moved to the right, positioned himself for combat. Grelia did not attack. He recovered his composure. His eyes darted everywhere, praising first her face then her body. Her reaction was immediate. Boiling with intensity, her hate resurfaced. The dark fire rose within her, her budding need for Valimir's approval forgotten. She wanted to see Grelia die, slowly, burning alive in the flames of her revenge. The hollow voice whispered, Do it. I'll show you the way. Karachman put his hand on her arm, restraining her from drawing the runes. She turned to him with rage. You dare? She spat, rippling with power. Invoke the light, Helena. Draw the sign, he commanded. She blinked, coming back to herself, and obeyed. As the compulsion dissipated, she heard a high-pitched scream from within her mind. Shuddering, she felt alone, outside humankind, but worst of all, vulnerable. Now again, Karachman said, his fear apparent. As she drew the symbol, Valimir said to Grelia, You insult my wife. Show her respect or learn from my sword. At the sound of Valimir's voice, Magda lost her stupor. Seeing Helena, her face showed surprise, followed quickly by a flash of hate. Immersed in her own struggle, Helena had lost her fear of Kansvar's favorite. Instead, she saw the profound changes in Magda with a curious objectivity. She was a travesty of her former self, her beauty degraded, her arrogance reduced to primal hatred, her greed transformed into the will to survive. Helena experienced a flash of pity for her, but was too drained to feel more. Your wife? You lie. You never marry outside your tribe. Prince Valamir, I come in good faith, offering this woman for that, he spoke. As he spoke, Grulia yanked the rope around Maga's wrist, reaching her forward. Look at her. Men dream of such perfection, and she's been broken. You'll have no trouble with this one. First you insult my wife. Now my word, come to me. I'll give you my answer, Valamir said, drawing his sword. Unless you're afraid, Thudamir said. His voice was a quiet taunt. Helena visualized her dagger deep in the Hun's throat, stopping his ugly words. Did he pause just for a moment? She wondered. Kretschmann remained at her side, his hand over hers. The title, Prince Valamir, reverberated in her mind, full of meaning, but she set it aside. Her fear of Grulia did not return. It had been supplanted by the whispering, hollow voice. Now that she had escaped its thrall, it terrified her. I have no argument with you, Valamir, Grulia said, his voice becoming wheedling. I offer you a bargain. You've made your offer. I reject it. Go. Thudamir shouted. You heard him. Grulia sat immobile on his horse. His eyes narrowed, his jaw moving as he spat, as he ground his teeth. You didn't let me finish what I started with her. I found her first. You have no right to take first pick. She's mine. I've made her my wife. Touch her, and you die. Grulia's snarl on his face was bestial. We understand each other, Valamir said, ignoring his rage. He had it almost as an afterthought. You could get a good price for Maga if you cleaned her up. Attila might want her. Think of the reward he'd give you. Grulia grimaced, the expression resembling a smile, then kicked Maga in the back, pushing her face forward into the dirt. Son of a whore. Helena muttered in Greek, the worst insult she knew. Valamir shrugged as if to say that what Grulia did with Maga was his own affair. Karatapan, he said, saddle Pasiel and rehalt to the mare. Helena dismounted, watching helplessly as Maga struggled to her feet. Pitching her voice low, she called after her, speaking the language of the village. Anything you want, Maga, I'll help you. Anything. Maga jerked her head to look, her hate softening for an instant into an uncharacteristic look of gratitude. She glanced at Grulia defiantly, despite her ragged appearance. I'll remember. Speaking emphatically in the same language, Valamir interrupted their exchange. You're not to interfere, Helena. It's not your concern. Do you understand? Man up, we ride. He watched her, his expression stern, unrelenting, as she got on Pasiel, now fully saddled. Give the signal, he said to Thudamir. Thudamir opened his mouth, and his throat produced a low rumble, elevating into a roar. The sound was horrifying. As it was answered from all sides, Helena's skin crawled and chills swept up her spine. Grulia shouted, his heels digging into his brown horse.